So I became a Baha'i, and once you get ensconced in something like that, and you believe it, and you pray it, and you feel touched by it, I just really never questioned it for many years. I
Yeah.
was a Baha'i for many, many years, over 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had some doubts at maybe 20 or 25 years into it, but that was just my life.
Yeah.
And I met with the community regularly for, they have, not like we go to church on Sunday, and we did that in the
Yeah.
Catholic Church too. They have a feast, they call it, every 19 days. There's 19 months of
Every
19,
19 days.
every 19 days. So
What's like the significance of 19 days?
19 is a very important number. I guess, I don't know if this is Persian or just
Yeah.
their numbers mean a lot, and there were 19 was just a significant number in the faith. And so there's 19 months of 19 days, and there's a few extra, they call it intercalary days. And this all just spoke to me. It gave me a good basis for raising my children in a spiritual manner. Baha'is don't drink, so I like to drink before that, and all of a sudden that's not part of my life.
Oh
So
wow.
all those years, just that's it, gave it up. And then I started, actually, it was 9/11 that rocked. I was already having some doubts about some things, but 9/11 rocked my faith a lot. And I just started thinking, oh, if religion is this awful that people are killing people in this manner, and of course that's been going on for generations, and I just am not part of it, but all of a sudden
All of a sudden it's like so real.
I'm from New Jersey, so having that happen in New York was really astounding. And I started to question things even more and let things slide, didn't go to things, and just kind of was losing that faith. And then it kind of got resurrected about a year or two later. I talked to some Baha'is, and I felt, well, maybe I just not being a good enough person and a good enough Baha'i, and so I got back into it. But it was never the same, Hafti. I never, that intense love of the faith never really came back. And then I realized that I never withdrew from it, which is what you would have to do formally up until that point, but I just drifted off from
Yeah.
it. And that's where Mary comes in. So then I was doing some work called the transformational breathing, kind of a program where you learn how to incorporate breathing in a way that helps you deal with your life and your problems and your difficulties and the good things and all of that. And it really struck a note with me, and I got very involved in that. And I went, there was somebody, we were really, I thought, blessed to have somebody in our town that taught that. And I went to become one of the instructors in a way. I went to classes and learned a lot. And the lady that had the classes, and her husband in North Fork, they had a very wonderful, beautiful place to live, and they had quite a lot of acreage, and on it they had Native American walks, and they had different things, but they also had a statue of the Blessed Mother. And one day, I was still, actually, they had a class, this is just coming, they had a class on grieving. And you would go for 3 or 4 days, and you'd write down what you're grieving over and what was so sad and everything. And I had lost a child. Our second son, Andrew, drowned when he was 18 months old. And that had happened quite a long time before that. And when that happened, that is the saddest thing in a way, but to me, he was with God. And I got so much benefit and grace and love from my faith that I felt that reinforced the idea that the Baha'i faith was true. Because they have a little quote that says, it's called a hidden word, death, where is thy sting? Why did I grieve? I have made the light to shine on thee its splendor. And I had a picture taken at the funeral of this little 18-month-old, and when I looked at the picture, I actually remember getting these pictures developed and picking them up and saying, God, give me another sign that this is going to be okay. And there was this picture of us standing around his casket with this huge shaft of light coming right down the middle of it. It still gives me goosebumps to think of it. And I thought all I could think of was that quote, I've made the light to shed on thee its splendor. So I went, all right, I know you're fine, Andrew, you're fine. So that whole thing just endeared me more to the faith, right? And that was in 83. He died in 83. He was born in 82. So that was a long time ago. And so it wasn't until 2001 and the 9/11 and all that I started really drifting away from religion again. So when I went back to this, learning this breathing technique, I saw the statue there and I went out to pray to Mary. I just was like, Mary, I don't know what's going on. And I hadn't really given any thought to the Blessed Mother at all because it wasn't a big figure in the Baha'i faith. But I started saying prayers. I remembered the Hail Mary and the Our Father and said that. And then I was listening to a writer that I like. Her name is Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and I have some of her books and I had them on audio, and I was listening this whole same time. And at one point, she's a Catholic, but weren't Catholic books. She wrote, you're too young to know this, but she wrote a really famous book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. And it's all about the mythology of women's stories and all this, and it's quite good. And I was listening to one of her, to a tape of one of her books, and this phrase came out that I had remembered as a kid, and it was called the Memorare. And it says, remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. When I heard those words, I just broke down and sobbed and cried and carried on emotionally. It just touched my heart, and I just wanted to be back with Mary. And somehow I believe that it's my devotion in that moment to Mary and her love for me, as she loves us all, got me somehow to the Orthodox Church. I had no thought of the Orthodox Church at that time. I didn't even know about it. But I ended up there, and I'm going to give credit to the Theotokos. So that's why Mary's my favorite.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's beautiful. How would you say that eventually led you to the Orthodox Church?
So what happened next? Let me think here. I just started a spiritual search. I realized I needed to have God in my life in a different way. I know when we got interrupted, I was talking about the grieving thing. And when I went to do that class about grieving, what I grieved was my loss of God. I had my son die, right? I've told you that story. But that's not what I did my grieving work on. I felt pretty okay about that in terms of the big picture. He's with God. But now I didn't believe in God. So that sounds contradictory, but that's kind of where I was. Like, God, where are you? I don't feel you. I don't sense you. I don't pray to you. I don't love you. I want to fall in love with God again. That was my goal for that series, that workshop. I want to fall in love with God again.
So was it like a lack of, like, you felt like kind of like a lack of like connection rather than a lack of belief that God exists?
Absolutely a lack of connection. And I would say I even thought I used to laugh and say, I'm a Bahai and I have more books on atheism than just about any Bahai you would imagine in my mind, because I was exploring that. I read a lot about atheism and agnosticism, and I considered myself an atheist by the end of that time. When I was going to these classes, I didn't have the new atheist movement was about, and I read all those, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and all that, Dan Dennett, and I forget the other one right now. Christopher Hitchens. I'd read all that stuff, and that was my camp now. That's where I was going. So then this other stuff came in, because it's still the big hole in your life when you don't have a connection with God. And I just was searching, and so I explored the Catholic Church. I went to a couple of church services, very uninspiring to me. And then I heard a person named Rod Dreher. He's a writer, and he was being interviewed by Jordan Peterson. I like Jordan Peterson. I'd gone to see Jordan Peterson speak with family and friends, and Rod Dreher was talking about the Orthodox Church, and he had been Protestant, and then he'd been a Catholic for 10 years or so, and now he was in the Orthodox. And for some reason, that interview, see, this is all God directed as far as I can tell, but that interview made me go, that sounds kind of cool. So I went to the church down the road, St. Peter's.
St. Peter's.
And while it drew me a little bit, it was off-putting too, just because it was so different. And I just remember telling somebody, well, I checked out Orthodoxy, but I'm checking that off my list.
Yeah.
It didn't work for me. But I made no connection. I didn't talk to anybody. I left early. It just wasn't happening for me. And then my daughter-in-law, Courtney, said, a couple weeks later, I went, oh man, I don't know where I'm going with this. And she said, why don't you try St. George's Orthodox Church? She's not a religious person at all, but she loved the Greek festival, right?
Yeah.
So this time I called up and I got somebody. I got Maria, I think Pres Maria first, Presbyter Maria. And then I came down and I met with Father Jim and Father Christian and Presbyter Maria, and they had a liturgy that day.
Yeah.
So something spoke to me about it. It wasn't like, oh, this is it. I'll never want anything else. But it just made me want to search more. And I talked to the priests, and I started going to catechism classes. And Deacon Michael was doing those classes. And so it just one thing after another. The more I learned, the more I yearned to be part of it. And this harkens back, I think, to my Catholic history. I wanted to receive the Eucharist. I wanted the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And the way to do that was to finish becoming a catechumen and to get chrismated and to be able to be part of the Divine Liturgy in the fullest way. And so that was the journey.